This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for individual professional legal advice. The podcast information was carefully compiled from vetted sources and references. However, Rose Resources outreach to safeguard the elderly cannot guarantee that you will not fall victim to a scam. Let's talk about scams. It's the must-listen show for anyone who wants to protect themselves and their loved ones from scams. Every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on K4HD Radio, Joyce Petrowski, founder of Rose, and her guests will provide valuable insights and practical tips on how to recognize and protect yourself from scams. And now, here is your host, Joyce Petrowski.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Watson. I'm a community outreach specialist for Rose Resources Outreach to safeguard the elderly. Joyce is going to be back next week. So appreciate you all watching and listening to our radio show while Joyce has been out for a few weeks, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk About Scams. This week, we have a guest who's going to share her scam experience. And so we've titled this show, My Almost Scam Experience, because it's a pretty scary story, but it has a very positive ending, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned. So this week's guest is Rachel Mullis. She was contacted by a real-life scammer here in the United States, and they are very believable, and they had her on the path to stealing her money. So she's going to share her story today. She's going to talk about the warning signs and what eventually changed her mind. And after reading her story that she shared with me, it's amazing that she didn't fall for it, because like 99% of people could have fallen for this one. It was done extremely well. So let's bring Rachel on.
Hello.
Good morning, Rachel. How are you doing this morning?
Hi, Brian. Good. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
So the first thing I'm just going to say off the top is I really appreciate you sharing your story. The easiest thing would be to not tell anybody, because there's this fear like, oh, I made a mistake, and there's a level of embarrassment sometimes, but we're all into no victim shaming. And in this case, you were not a victim. You won. You didn't fall for the scam, and you're so brave to tell your story, and thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure. It is embarrassing. I will say that's real.
So I've known Rachel's husband for a long time, and he had told me what had happened. Mm-hmm. And I listened, and I said, do you think she'd be willing to share her story on the Let's Talk About Scams podcast radio show? Mm-hmm. And her husband said, let me ask. And then right away, he got back to me and said, she'll do it. So we finally found a date that worked. Yeah. And today we're going to tell the story. So yeah. Rachel, mm-hmm. How were you contacted with this scam? How did it all start?
It's just in the middle of the day. We have 2 kids, which we homeschool, and I was home and busy with them, and the phone rang. And the caller ID said the Pima County Sheriff's Department. So immediately you kind of jump to worst case scenario. Is something wrong with my husband, my parents, what's going on? So I answered the phone, and they were there. So.
And what did this person say?
He just identified himself as a police officer. He gave me his badge number. He asked me to double check the phone number, which maybe that was kind of weird, but just said, you can see that this is the Pima County Sheriff's Department. You can, Google it and make sure this is the right number, which it was. And just told me, he was calling on behalf of or because I had missed jury duty, federal jury duty, and he was calling to follow up with that.
How would you describe his tone, his voice, his attitude?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a stereotypical police officer. I mean, he seemed very calm and confident. He spoke English. So I think I had this idea maybe that all scammers have, are from another country or something, but his English was perfect. And yeah, I believed him that he was a police officer.
So he claimed you didn't show up for jury duty. What was going to be the next step?
Well, I mean, of course I apologized. I didn't remember ever getting a jury duty summons in the mail. He told me that this was for federal jury duty. And so I had signed the letter had come certified mail. And so I think I would remember a certified letter in the mailbox, but he told me the date that it was signed on. It was several months earlier. And so I went and looked in my calendar and I thought, well, I was home that day. Maybe I signed it and I forgot. I don't know. We have a lot of stuff going on. Seems weird that I would forget, but maybe I did, So I asked if I could just have a minute. I went downstairs to my desk and I was just rifling through all my old papers. Like, do I have a jury duty summons that I missed, but I didn't find anything. So I went back up there and I told him I didn't think I had ever received it. And he said, occasionally what happens is like, if my husband was home, he could have signed for it. And maybe that's what happened. And then he just forgot to give me the jury duty summons. So he did.
And then did he say there was a warrant out for your arrest?
He did. Yes. So that kind of came a little bit later. But he did say that the judge, and I guess I had been summoned like 2 days before. He called me and he said the judge, and he gave me her name. I wrote it down, but she was a real judge in Pima County. She is a real stickler for people that miss jury duty. And so she had called out my name twice and I didn't respond. So there were now 2 warrants out for my arrest. One was for failure to appear in court, and the other one was for contempt of court.
Wow. Now, he also had your correct home address. Is that right?
Yes, he did. He verified it with the certified mail. He said, you know what, this is the address that we have where the certified mail, where it was signed and delivered. And is this your correct address? And I said, well, yeah, it was my right address.
Wow. So right off the top, the caller ID says Pima County Sheriff's Department, and they have your correct address. So it really builds the credibility of their scam.
Yeah.
And at that point, you were believing it 100%.
It just seems so weird. I mean, I think the fact that there would be a warrant out for my arrest for missing jury duty for the first time in my whole life. I mean, I've served on juries before. It seemed extreme to me, but I think the thing that was convincing to me is that he was a police officer. And I just think for myself, like, I have no reason not to trust a police officer. I just thought he reassured me several times that he's done this many times before. And he knows that it can be, surprising when people find out what the consequences are for missing jury duty. And I think I just trusted him. So I thought he was.
At a certain point, did you ask to speak to your husband?
I did, yes. So, that part kind of came after he. So he said, because I had this warrant out for my arrest, I had 2 options. Basically, I had to stay on the phone with him, and I could post bail, essentially. So one ticket had a fine of $5,000 and another ticket had a fine of $2,000. And so if I posted bail and then I showed up at my court date to explain why I missed jury duty, then I would get the money back. But if I were to hang up the phone with him at any point, he said, then it's basically like I'm denying bail, or I'm refusing to cooperate with the police. So at that point, then the police would be dispatched to my house to arrest me. Um, and so I asked if I could hang up the phone to call my husband and just talk this over with him because it felt so bizarre. And now I owe $7,000, to post bail. And he, the scammer basically said, no, I cannot contact my husband. And I said, well, why can't I call him? I don't understand. And he said, well, because we need to make sure that, sometimes people, like in a case, like say I knew what case I was going to be on, which I didn't, but there could be people there that would intimidate the jurors, and so if they had intimidated me into not showing up to jury duty because they knew I don't know, somehow how I would vote or something like that, then my husband then would now be a part of the crime of the crime, I guess. And there would be a warrant out for his arrest as well. So it doesn't make like a whole lot of sense, but he was very confident that this is how it works. Like if I tell my husband, now he is also complicit in me missing jury duty, or maybe he's the one that pressured me to miss jury duty. And so he is going to be arrested too. So it kind of felt confusing. Like it just seemed to spiral out of control very quickly, but he did always have answers for everything I brought up. He knew what to say. And again, I'd never been arrested. I'd never been in trouble with the law. I thought maybe this was on me. Like I was the ignorant one, that I didn't understand how this worked. Now I see clearly that he was taking advantage of me, but that was how it played out.
Well, and that's the thing. You raised a lot of concerns, you raised a lot of questions, but he had an answer for everything. And then you also said that he brought up the fact that if both you and your husband went to jail, that Child Protective Services would have to take your kids. How did that come up in the conversation?
Well, then he said also, he goes, I have to ask, is anyone else at home with you? And I said, well, we have our children are here. And he said, well, he goes, ma'am, I hate to tell you this, but there have been instances I know of where both the husband and wife have gone to jail, and then DPS or CPS has come in and had to take the children, because where else are they going to go if both the parents are in jail? And I think that at that point, I mean, this has been building. I mean, this was like a 3-hour ordeal, maybe. It was very long. It was exhausting.
Right.
So it's kind of been building and building and building up until this point. And I think at this point now I'm feeling very overwhelmed. Like I do not understand what is happening. Now they're saying my husband could go to jail, my kids could go to CPS. And I'm all because I missed jury duty. And it just seemed like outlandish. But again, he said he was a police officer, and I felt like he was convincing me that I just didn't understand these things, and he was right. He's done it many times, so.
Did you end up talking to more than one caller?
I did. I think he was honestly getting really frustrated with me because I kept like asking him to explain it better. It just seemed so outlandish that all this was happening because I missed jury duty. And so he said, well, would you like to speak to my supervisor? And I said, I think I would. Yeah. So he puts his supervisor on the phone, and he was a really nice guy too. He was friendly, but also very reassuring. Like, oh, I understand. This does seem crazy, doesn't it, Rachel? But I promise you, this is normal. This is what happens. And then he kind of took me through the rest of the ordeal. So
then now they want the money. How you're finding yourself driving to go pay money. What happened next?
Oh my gosh, I still can't believe I did this, but this is what happened. So, so he told me, like, he said, I'm going to stay on the phone with you. Well, first of all, he asked what kind of car I drove and how many miles were on it. So I asked again, like, why do you need to know this? This doesn't make sense to me. And he said, well, you know how in jury duty you get reimbursed for mileage, which is true. he said, you get reimbursed for mileage for this kind of thing too. And I was like,
Wow.
well, I said, I don't feel comfortable giving you that information. So I said, how do I know? I said, I'm going to go get $7,000 out of the bank, and you know what kind of car I drive and where I'm going. How do I know you're not going to rob me? And he said, oh, ha, 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 ha. Good point. He goes, I've never had anyone say that before. He goes, you don't have to give me your type of car. And so I was like, okay. So anyway, so he stayed on the phone with me the whole way. I drove to the bank. He told me when I got there to the teller, I was not to tell the teller anything about what was going on, because then she too would be complicit and could possibly go to jail. And so I was to go in. I was supposed to, he was on speakerphone while I drove because he insisted on being safe, right? So hands-free. So he just wanted to be on speakerphone in the car, which he was. And then same thing at the bank. And then I do think the teller probably could tell I was really stressed. I do think she was kind of trying to ask me some questions, but I just played it cool. Again, at this now, we're probably at about, I would say like the 2 to 3 hour, I don't know. The whole thing took at least, I would say 3.5 hours. So we're probably at like the 2 hour mark. I don't know, 2.5 hour mark of just being on the phone with this guy. And just, you can't even really think, I mean, they're just constantly talking, constantly giving you directions. And I think for me, that kind of helped them, because I wasn't even able really to process. I was trying to think logically about it all, but there wasn't a lot of time to, So anyway, so I got the money out of the bank. He told me where to deposit it. He said they have these like bail. He had a funny name for it, but basically a bail collection office all over town. So he asked me where, like, he told me one that was close to my house, and it was at the Safeway, in the Safeway shopping center. And so I thought, okay, well, I've never noticed a bail collection office, but I didn't know what they looked like either. No idea. So I got to the Safeway, and he said, I said, okay, I'm here. Like, where do I go? I thought it was the bank or something in the Safeway. And then he told me it was the Coinstar machine. And I thought, the Coinstar machine? What in the world? This does not make sense. Like, why would why would they collect bail in a Coinstar machine? And so he said again, that it was to protect people's privacy and make them so it's not as embarrassing. Like, if they owe bail for something, they can just, do it this way and nobody has to know. And then he said I would be given my own account number to put the money in, and then I would get, because it was in my account, I would get it back. That's how they would know it was mine, and I would get it back after I showed up to court. So I will say too, several times I thought about just driving straight to the police station, because it's not too far from there. And every time I brought it up, he said, well, you can, but they're going to arrest you as soon as you walk in there.
Wow.
And so again, it was just like so much kind of fear and manipulation, and just, I don't know, my head was just spinning and thinking like, what is happening? This feels like a movie,
Right. So Rachel, you walk into the grocery store with $7,000, and you're told to go to the Coinstar machine. Did they give you an account number or a QR code?
They gave me an account number.
Okay.
For me to put the money in. So. And
then you got all the way to the machine?
I did. I was so nervous. Like, I just kept thinking, he knows where I am. He knows I have cash. But again, it's just this weird dichotomy kind of, but he's a police officer and I'm supposed to trust police officers. Like, a police officer wouldn't do anything, wouldn't try to steal my money, So anyway, so I got there and I started putting in the account number or whatever. And the main screen that pops up says law enforcement will never ask you to deposit money in a Coinstar machine. And so I read that out loud to him. And I said, but wait, it says right here, you will never ask me to do this. And he said, oh, well, that's just, and I don't even remember, but he had some kind of thing like that's for other situations, not this situation. This situation is fine, And so I started, I stood there forever. I just stood there and I said to him, I said, how do I know this isn't a scam? This feels so much like a scam. And he said, well, I've given you my name too. He goes, look up my name, And so I Googled his name, and it was the name of a Pima County officer. And so I thought, again, just this like war in my head of like, this seems so wrong, but yet, I don't know, he's telling me that he's a police officer. So I just said, I cannot do this. I am going to take my chances and go to the police station. If there really is a warrant out for my arrest, like every red flag is going off in my brain, and I have to pay attention to that. I can't just keep denying this and trusting you. So I said, I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to go to the police station and talk to them directly. And he got so mad. He started swearing. It was like a light switched. He started swearing at me. He called me all kinds of names, and I just got scared and I hung up the phone. And I thought, well, clearly he was not a police officer. Now if there was any doubt, that doubt is gone. And so I just ran to my car essentially and locked all the doors and started driving home, And I will say I called my husband. He was not available right then, but I called our friends whose husband was a police officer, and I just told him the story, and he was very much like, that was a scam. We do not, if you ever miss jury duty, they will notify you by mail, which I didn't know. Mm-hmm. They will not ever send a police officer to your house for missing jury duty. And the fine, if there even is a fine, the fine is always less than $500. It would never be like $7,000. Right. So don't quote me on the fine part, but I know for sure they'll let you know by mail. A police officer won't come and arrest you. So he was reassuring. I gave him the information of what had happened, and I had taken like a screenshot of the Coinstar machine that had my account on it, or the account number I was sending the money to. So I gave him all of that information, and then, and that was kind of the end of it. So,
wow. Think about this. You could understand why this scammer was so upset, because he had devoted 2 + 3 hours, and he mm-hmm. could almost feel that $7,000 in his hands.
Yeah.
And you bailed out at the last minute.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. That do you think that sign on the screen was the final thing that changed your mind, or was it just a culmination of multiple things?
Well, probably. I think that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I just think I'm so glad that was there. Had that not been there, I might have gone ahead and done it, but again, it was just another red flag. Like, this does not make sense, So.
And were you on the phone the entire time with him?
The entire time. Yeah.
So he'd never let you, catch your breath, take a pause. Because, one of the big things that we have at Rose is we have an infographic that's called the anatomy of a scam.
Okay.
And it's 3 parts. It talks about you're contacted out of the blue. In your case, Rachel, you got a phone call at home. Mm-hmm. You're given a compelling reason to act. In this case, you missed jury duty. You owe money. Mm-hmm. And then they always want money. So in this case, they told you to withdraw money from your bank account and go down to a Coinstar account at the grocery store. You hit all 3. And then the thing we show in the middle is urgency. Mm-hmm. He didn't say, pay this money, but do it within the next 3 days.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He wanted to have you do it immediately. And the reason why they do that is so that you don't get to talk to a husband, a friend, or in this case, a police officer that you know in town.
Mhm.
It's absolutely amazing. Now, the thing I just caught you saying, it really caught my attention. When you went out to the parking lot, you locked the doors to your car, and you mentioned that. Why?
Well, because like I said, I felt really scared that they were watching me at the grocery store waiting. And if I don't know if that was logical if they were in town. I know most scammers do tend to be out of town, in these big scam centers or things like that. But yeah, I felt vulnerable, I think. So
No,
locking
and
the
that's absolutely. They knew your home address. They knew which store you're going to. So they literally could have had you under surveillance. And
Mhm.
especially when you um, didn't follow through with their commands, they may have just changed their minds and just did a robbery.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's absolutely scary. Now, looking back now with the hindsight of time and
Mhm.
not having being on the phone with them, what were the warning signs now that you look back that jump out at you?
Yeah. I think like not being able to tell anyone, that should have been a huge red flag. And it was. Um, but it should have been I wish I would have paid attention to that more and just been like, of course I'm talking to my husband. Of course I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to check with my police officer friend or um yeah, so I think again, it's that idea I think of like like a lion hunting a herd of antelope, let's say. Like they always drive the one off by themselves, right? Because the one that's by themselves is easier to get to, And so when scammers, you know, can separate you from whoever, my children, my husband, my family, my friends, you're just way more vulnerable. So I would say that was a big red flag looking back that I wish I just would have, my husband too. He was like, I would have gone to jail with you. It was totally fine. I would have gone to jail.
Oh, what a good guy. Now, Rachel, have you shared this story with your family and friends?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
And that's important because a lot of times when something like this happens to someone, they tend to just clam up and don't share it. It is important that you share it with others because that's the only way we're going to stop these scammers. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. And
Mhm.
that's why you sharing your story today on Let's Talk About Scams, someone's going to watch this and they're going to get that jury scam call and they're going to say, that's not right. But
Yeah.
this one was executed very well. I mean, I I'm actually kind of impressed. You know, in a way that they had an answer for everything, and they've obviously used this scam before. You weren't the first person that they called,
Yeah. No.
and so again, thank you for sharing your story. What advice would you have for people out there that when it comes to something like this? You've gone through it. What's your advice?
I think I would just say to trust your instincts. I think a lot of times that is correct. We kind of sense sometimes if we're in danger or we have a feeling like this isn't quite right, and I think I would trust that. I would go with your gut. If you feel it's not right, um, I would listen to that, and not discount that.
Right. No, and that's important. And thank you. When I do presentations, um, and I tell people if you get on the phone with someone, it's okay to lie to them, um, and because they're lying to you.
Mhm,
So I always say, you can lie to the scammer. So all of us need to have a lie in the back of our mind that we can use, and just almost practice it. Just say, you know what, I got someone at the door. I
mhm.
got food on the stove. I have company right now. I have a doctor's appointment. And the funny thing is, I told people this one time, and I was at a church, and then I kind of caught the irony of telling people they can lie in a church. and they got a chuckle out of it. But it's, because here's the deal. We're all going to get these scam calls at one time or another, and we have to be prepared. And the only way we are prepared is by talking about it and just having a plan in our mind. So this was absolutely amazing, Rachel. Your advice is amazing. I'm so glad that you're willing to share your story. It's going to help somebody. And like I said, it's very brave to go on here, because a lot of people would sit there and say, you know what? Oh, I almost fell for a scam. I'm not going to talk about it. But in your case, you did. So thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that, like I said at the beginning, there is an element of shame. Like, how could I be so stupid, to not listen to myself, to not tell anybody. But I think, I have told several friends, and all of them, and my family too, all of them said, like, thank you for telling us, because now we know, right? Like that could happen. And so, I hope it made me a little wiser in it, for the next time, and maybe help someone else too. So
one of the things I always say at my presentations is, it can happen to all of us. And if it can happen to a smart person like you, it literally can happen to all of us. So that's what gets rid of the stigma of scammers, is very smart people fall for scams. Rachel, I'm going to give you the last word. Is there anything I didn't ask you about, or any part of your story that you wanted to share before we close out today's episode?
I don't think so. Just one other thing, and you maybe know the statistics, but another thing that helped me feel a little bit better is I looked up statistics on like how much money scammers take every year. It's shocking, and the other thing with sharing my story then too, other people would be like, oh, well, I know somebody who actually did give 30 and a lot more money. I mean, $7,000 is relatively small compared to some of these other scams where they take, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars from people. So it is a real problem. So anyway, I hope this can help someone.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie. They're absolutely staggering. And I've met people that have lost as little as $200, and I've met people that have lost over millions of dollars. And it affects people equally. And it's awful. And we're not going to eliminate the scammers, because it's just too profitable. But we can dry up the pool of victims by talking about it and normalizing it and sharing information. So Rachel, thank you once again.
Yeah, of course.
You did a great job. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you around town in the near future.
Sounds good.
And everybody out there, thank you for tuning in today to Let's Talk About Scams. Remember to go to roseadvocacy.org, and please sign up for our newsletter. We send it out at the beginning of each month. It's full of great information, and it's just something we need to be aware of and have in the back of our minds all the time. It's just being prepared mentally for when those scammers call. So please sign up. We will be back next week. It'll be Joyce Petrowski back, and I get to take a break for a few weeks until my next show. So thank you all for tuning in today. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Well, that's all the knowledge for this episode. Tune in every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on K4HD Radio at k4hd.com as Joyce explores a variety of knowledge so you have the power to make scam protection your healthy habit. And until then, feel free to reach out to Joyce and let's talk about scams.